In the heart of Africa, where the sun kisses the plains of Kenya, a name has echoed for decades, a name born of struggle, courage, and relentless hope. His story is not just about politics, it's about a nation's dream, a people's voice, and a man who refused to bow to fear.
Mimi ni mfukara. Mimi ni maskini kama wewe.
This is the story of Raila Odinga, the fighter. Long before the world knew his name, Raila was a boy from Mosino, Nyanza. His father, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, was one of Kenya's founding fathers, a freedom fighter who stood shoulder to shoulder with Jomo Kenyatta. From him, Raila inherited a fire, a belief that freedom means more than independence, it means justice for all. As Kenya built its young democracy, Raila watched, not from the comfort of power, but from the front lines of struggle. A teacher, an engineer, and a thinker, his hands built machines, but his heart built movements. He spoke when silence was safer. He stood when others fell. And for that, he was punished. In 1982, a failed coup shook Kenya. The government pointed fingers, and Raila Odinga was among those accused. He was imprisoned without trial for nearly a decade. 9 long years, in darkness. But even behind bars, his spirit refused to break. When the cell doors finally opened, Kenya had changed, but so had he. From that moment, his mission was clear: to give every Kenyan a voice. When Raila Odinga walked out of prison, the world had changed, but Kenya was still searching for her true freedom. Democracy had a new voice. And it spoke through him. They called him Baba, father of the people. A man who could walk among the rich and powerful, but still kneel beside the poor and forgotten. His voice carried the power of truth, and his courage awakened the silent hearts of millions. Raila joined the movement to open Kenya's political space, the push for multi-party democracy. Alongside other brave souls, he faced police batons, tear gas, and rejection. Yet he never turned away. To him, democracy wasn't a privilege, it was a promise. A promise that Kenya would belong not to the few, but to all. And in 1997, the promise grew louder. Raila stepped forward to run for the presidency. He didn't win, but he didn't lose either. Because a dream once spoken can never be silenced. Over the years, Raila became the voice of reform. From the dusty streets of Kibra to the parliament halls of Nairobi, he built bridges, sometimes literally, sometimes in spirit. He spoke of unity, justice, and fairness. And when Kenya's democracy trembled, he was there, holding it steady. But leadership is never without pain. In 2007, the country he loved was torn apart by post-election violence. More than 1,000 lives were lost. And the dream of peace almost vanished. Yet again, Raila chose the path of peace. He reached across the divide, not for himself, but for Kenya. His handshake with President Mwai Kibaki calmed the nation. It was a moment that showed, true leadership is not about power, it's about sacrifice. From that day, the world saw Raila Odinga not just as a politician, but as a symbol, a man who carried the pain of a nation and still chose hope. Kenya was changing. And once again, Raila Odinga stood at the heart of that change. He had seen prisons, betrayal, and loss, but now, he saw a chance to reshape the soul of his nation. The fight for a new constitution became his new battlefield. Raila believed that Kenya's pain, the inequality, the division, the corruption, could only be healed through a new system of justice and governance. In 2010, the dream became reality. Kenya adopted a new constitution, one that gave power back to the people. For many, it was more than law. It was the proof that struggle was never in vain, but the road ahead remained steep. In 2013, Raila once again ran for president. The nation held its breath, and when the results were announced, heartbreak followed. The Supreme Court ruled against him, and once more, his dream was deferred. Yet even in defeat, he carried himself with grace. "Let peace prevail," he said. It was not the voice of a loser, it was the voice of a patriot. In 2017, the battle returned, fiercer, louder, and more emotional than ever. Allegations of corruption, a contested vote, and rising tensions pushed Kenya to the brink once again. Raila's call was clear: truth and transparency for every Kenyan, and then came a moment that would shock the world. The opposition leader and the president, sworn rivals, met and shook hands. On the steps of Harambee House, history was made. The handshake between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta was more than a truce. It was a message that Kenya's future was greater than its past. That unity is stronger than hate, Raila once said. We cannot build a nation by burning bridges, we must build it by crossing them together. Those words would become the heartbeat of a new generation. By the late 2010s, Raila Odinga had become more than a politician. To millions, he was a symbol, a living story of endurance. The name of Baba no longer meant just father, it meant hope. His vision reached beyond elections. He spoke of unity, development, and dignity. He dreamed of a Kenya where a child in Turkana could dream the same dream as one in Nairobi. Where tribe would no longer divide, but define a shared identity. The Building Bridges Initiative, the BBI, became his blueprint for healing a wounded nation. It was not perfect, but it was sincere. It asked Kenyans to look beyond the ballot and into the mirror. To see themselves as one people, under one flag. Raila Odinga's journey was never about easy victories. It was about sacrifice, for democracy, for peace, and for justice. He knew betrayal, yet he chose forgiveness. He saw division, yet he preached unity. Some called him the people's president. And in many ways, he was. Not by title, not by crown, but by the beating hearts of those who believed in him. For every tear shed in the streets, there was a heart inspired. For every election lost, there was a lesson learned. Raila Odinga taught Kenyans that leadership is not about power, it is about purpose. Even as time passed and the storms grew heavy, one thing never changed: his love for Kenya. A love that outlived pain, survived betrayal, and transcended politics. When the news broke, a nation fell still. Streets that once roared his name went quiet. Radios played his speeches. Children asked questions their parents struggled to answer. Raila Odinga, the man who had walked through prisons and parliaments, through triumphs and tears, had taken his final rest. But even in death, he brought the nation together one last time. From Kisumu to Nairobi, from Mombasa to Eldoret, millions gathered not to mourn a politician, but to celebrate a patriot. They sang freedom songs, waved flags, and whispered prayers. In every tear, there was gratitude. In every silence, there was respect. For Kenya knew she had lost a son, but gained a legend. As his body was carried home to Nyanza, the land he loved seemed to breathe with him one last time. Time moves on, but some stories never fade. They live in the wind, in the voices of the people, in the soil of the land they fought for. Raila Odinga's story is one of those few, timeless, and eternal. For over half a century, he carried the weight of a nation's dreams. He stood tall when fear ruled the land, and smiled when hope was all he had left. He taught Kenya that leadership is not about the seat you hold, but the hearts you touch. Generations will speak of him, the man who fought without bitterness, who forgave without forgetting. They will speak of the dream he left behind. A Kenya united, fair, and free. His voice may be silent now, but his words still guide a nation. The struggle is eternal, not for one man, but for the soul of Kenya. That candle still burns, in every act of kindness, in every call for justice, in every young dreamer who believes in a better tomorrow. His flame became our light. Raila Amolo Odinga, son, teacher, freedom fighter, and father of a nation. His life reminds us that even in struggle, there is strength. Even in pain, there is purpose.